right, here we go. For the people that are watching the video portion of this, can see that our guest tonight is the one and only, one of the greatest broadcasters ever to live, the great Joe Buck, wearing the Green Bay Packers sweatshirt tonight. So, Joe, welcome, and I like the support you're showing the Packers. You look good.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons why. First of all, you got to know your audience. And I would never mess with A.J. Hawk. In fact, right now I'm just trying to flat out butter you up. Secondly, there's some weird perception in Green Bay and the hinterland up in the great north that not just me, but Troy and I don't like the Packers, which stuns both of us. But this is not something that I just bust out for the HawkCast here. This is something that I wear around town. I go to Starbucks in it here in St. Louis. I'm not wearing a Rams one. I'm wearing a Packer one, and I wear it with pride.
There you go. Well, thank you. I think the people in Green Bay, they should get on board. I don't know what I know you've mentioned to me before that you said people feel like you don't like the Packers, or even doesn't everybody think you don't like their team, whichever city?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I get it more in baseball because at least the way I justify it is, if you're the fan of the San Francisco Giants, you're listening to your home announcers all week, and then the national guys show up, and it's like, oh, they're critical of my team, or oh, they got excited for the other side hitting a home run. They don't like my team, which couldn't be further from the truth. I'm just looking for great games, and I guess for some reason the whole thing came around with the Green Bay Packers, like they thought I got too excited for the other side and not for the Packers. The funny thing is, and what Troy and I laugh about, if there's one team that we just absolutely love to cover because it's fun to go up there and be at Lambeau, and you guys are so easy to cover. Mike McCarthy is so open with us. Aaron's fun to talk to. You are. It's just a very open, easy way to do a game. And so of all the teams we enjoy covering, Green Bay's probably right at the top of the list. But for whatever the perception or reasons are, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure with you it's probably like a no-win situation. Regardless of where you go, people think no matter what you say, I think you got to be in a weird spot. How does that, being a play-by-play guy, how do you deal with that when people think you're biased, A, but how do you handle not getting too excited or not, I don't know how to word it, but you know what I mean, where
yeah,
you got to call the game, and you need to call the game, whatever people want you to be right down the middle, I guess. But regardless, you're going to get excited for both teams at different times. So how do you go about that?
Well, a couple of things you said there are true. I mean, first of all, you try to go down the middle, but when you realize who's listening, those people are not down the middle. So if I'm on in a family room in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they're going to hear it from the Packers side, which I totally get. If you guys are playing the Vikings, the people in Minnesota think he just, pulled a groin calling a touchdown for Jordy Nelson. He hates the Vikings. So, you just, at some point, you just say, forget it. I can't win that battle. I'll just do my job. I'm glad people care. I'm glad people care about what we do. And they certainly care about what we're covering. So, you just leave it at that. The weird thing is that I grew up in St. Louis. My dad did the Cardinals for literally 50 years. I did the Cardinals for 16 or 17, and when I do the Cardinals baseball in the postseason, people in St. Louis think that I am against the Cardinals and that I'm too pro San Francisco Giants or Texas Rangers or whoever. So when you realize that you get it from your own hometown, you know you just can't win.
Yeah, I think people are going to hear what they want to hear. It's going to come across to them how they want to view it, so it doesn't matter. So, yeah, good for you to not have to worry about it. But that's the thing. So you live in St. Louis. Obviously, your dad's a legendary guy himself. I would think everyone would think that you're the biggest Cardinals homer. They would think you naturally that would just be in your bones, in your blood, growing up watching what your dad does. Is that hard, though? I mean, you had to be somewhat of a Cardinals fan growing up.
No, yeah, and I was, and I think once you turn professional and you realize that it's your job, especially when I'm there for Fox and I'm not broadcasting for the Cardinals, I have to do my job, and my job is to be as down the middle and as excited for both sides as I can be. That said, I did trail around after my dad as a kid. I got to see how much he loved doing what I get to do now. I realize that I get in and I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I wouldn't be sitting here without my dad's influence, both, letting him letting me be around him for all those years and learning from him. And B, the whole nepotism thing started when I was 19 and getting hired at Louisville to broadcast AAA baseball. And I was doing the Cardinals before I turned 21, which allowed me to do all this stuff at a young age. So, I don't shy away from any of that stuff. He was my best friend, passed away 12 years ago. I embrace it, and I really cherish the time I had with him. And I realize how lucky I was, and I am, and will be, however long I get to do this, because he was my dad. So, there's a lot of St. Louis running through me, but when I'm there wearing a Fox headset, I really don't think that way.
Yeah, I figured you've been doing it for long enough. You're the ultimate pro, so it's probably pretty easy. It's just doing your job. It's like they ask players, what's it like playing against some of your buddies? Because we do. We play against guys that I was teammates with in college, pros, whatever. And once it's there on the field, it's just another game, I feel like. Probably the same thing that you're feeling.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm sure, there are more similarities, too. When I started and I was doing a World Series at the age of 27, on national TV at Yankee Stadium, I was scared out of my mind to get exposed or embarrass myself, or I wasn't ready for that kind of a stage. And I'm sure no matter, top 10 draft pick, you had the great college career and you think, well, I can do this, but you always have that doubt running through the back of your mind until you actually go do it, or until they kick it off. Or for us, when you guys kick it off, I just do the game. Whether it's a Super Bowl or it's a preseason game, I treat it all the same way. And, that's kind of been the way I've approached all this stuff. Coming off this last Super Bowl, which was a complete blowout, it was probably the stiffest test I've had in the booth, because there's a huge audience of 111 million people watching, and you're trying to spin plates to make a 35-point game seem interesting. That's when it's a lot of work. When you guys are in some nail-biting game against the Bears in Week 17, that game does itself, and you just hope to kind of stay out of the way and not screw it up.
I'm glad you brought that Super Bowl up. This past Super Bowl, where the Seahawks blew out the Broncos, obviously, I was watching that game, and I honestly started thinking of you guys, just because I've been paying attention more now to broadcasters over the last couple of years and what you guys do. And I'm thinking, man, what do you do during this? Because it was like all of a sudden every ball that Peyton would complete, it was like, oh, you can never count them out. Like, what are you supposed to say?
Right, yeah. You lie.
Yeah.
About midway through that, right after the opening kickoff of the second half, it was pretty much over. I'll show you here, since we're on the HawkCast, for God's sake. We're in my office. I'll give you what I make up, and I actually have the one from your Super Bowl, because that was the one I did prior to that, when I was screaming at the top of my lungs, Green Bay, that the Green Bay Packers were bringing the Lombardi Trophy home. Mr. He hates the Green Bay Packers out there. But I have this thing that I make up, and it's got offense and defense going at one another with all the vital information, like name, height, weight, college, stats, whatever it is, and then little notes that I have written in here, if you can see. Little stuff that I have, and believe me, when it's a great game, I don't look at any of this stuff. I know that you're number 50, and I know that that's A.J. Hawk running around making tackles. But if it's a game like this last Super Bowl was, I'm looking at this thing, diving into it as much as I can to try and come up with some other storyline. There's always something to say. You don't want to make people's ears bleed by talking and talking and talking, but you got to do something. So, that's when your prep and all of your pregame work comes into play, and that's kind of the way I go about it.
Well, I know you're probably definitely too humble to admit it, but do you think, in my opinion, you guys, play-by-play guys, are taken hugely for granted by the general public that watch games? And the only reason I say this is because I used to take you guys for granted when I would just watch games as a normal fan, which that's how I do. But now I watch you guys and pay attention to you guys as more of, I try to just think about it from your point of view sometimes. And what you guys do is a joke. The play-by-play guy, not only do you have to know every player in the NFL basically, and you got to be able to pick it up like that and think of it as it's happening, but you just make it sound so with such a rhythm, and you just get in that zone. You feel like, do you think that people don't? I don't even want to, I know it's hard to say you think you're taken for granted, but do you think people don't pay attention to that as much?
Well, I think the frustrating thing is, and the last thing I would ever do is whine about it, because I get it, and I've got the best job in the world. I mean, I'm paid to sit at the 50-yard line at Lambeau Field and broadcast a game to millions of people. It's a weird skill. There's a little bit of acting involved. There's a little bit of entertainment involved, and there's a lot of being able to reacting, to something that could come out of nowhere. I mean, I think back to a game that predates you at Lambeau Field, where I had to react to Randy Moss in the back of the end zone when he pantomimed mooning the crowd in the back of the end zone and then rubbed his backside, for lack of a better word, against the goalpost. And my natural reaction was to say, that's disgusting. And I hope we don't show a replay of it, because on some level, I think you have to draw the line. Now, for people who don't know me, they think, oh, well, this is some stuck-up, rich guy, announcer guy, snob, prude guy who just doesn't like to have fun. And that's me. Now, I'm the exact
opposite of that. Yeah, getting to know you the little bit I have, you're definitely opposite of that. But you're a professional. You do your job. You're on the number one crew for a reason.
Yeah, and I have to be able to trust my reaction. So the hard part of my job is to have something happen, and I have to react right now, and I have to throw it out there. I don't have a delete button. It does. There's no delay, really. I mean, if I say it, it's in somebody's living room, and I have to live with it. So, when I go on different websites, whether it's Deadspin or it's awfulannouncing.com or whatever it is, and they nitpick what you say, part of you wants to just take your headset off and go, here you go. Give it a shot. Let's see how you do.
With a producer in your ear.
An audience. Yeah. I'll listen, and I'll pick apart what you say in the spur of the moment. It's just not that easy. But I say that knowing that it's the greatest job, and I love it. I'd rather work than not work. And I'm sure you'd rather play in a game than sit around. And I'm lucky that I've found this thing to do with my life.
Of course, in that whole Randy Moss situation you're talking about, so I've heard you say people got upset that they said you called it disgusting or whatever, disgusting act, and so it came back and acted like it was okay that Randy did it because he claimed, what did they say, that the Packers fans mooned the opposing bus?
Mooned the bus.
Does that happen?
Give him the finger too. So why? How about just give everybody the finger after a touchdown?
Has that been confirmed? Because I've never heard of that. And living in Green Bay, I can't imagine fans. You've met people in Green Bay when you go to games. They're the nicest people on the planet.
Yeah, I know, and that's getting back to what I said before. That's the other part that kills me. I love going up there. I mean, people could not be nicer. So whatever. Let me tell you how much Randy Moss cared about me saying that. 0. I've seen Randy Moss since. Now he's at Fox.
Yep.
We did a two-way broadcast deal at the beginning of the season this last year. I wasn't even sure he knew I said it after I brought it up. He couldn't care less. He got fined $10,000 or whatever he got fined and said in the parking lot, that's whatever, straight cash, homie, or whatever. And he moved on about his life, but I still get people blowing me up on Twitter, I'd say once a day, if I followed that stuff anymore, and I've finally gotten off Twitter, that still bring it up. It's like, who cares? It's one moment, but people like to dig, and when they think they find a soft spot, maybe they have, they like to poke at it as much as they can.
You said you've gotten off of Twitter. Is it just because it gets? I'm sure you can handle, but it just get boring and not as much boring, but does it just get almost like you don't care anymore? It's just you're over it.
Yes, to some degree. I enjoyed interacting with people. I have no problem having a really good conversation with fans, even people that think I'm terrible at what I do. That's one thing. But when it becomes relentless, or you start diving into who's really picking at you, and it's like a 13-year-old kid with 2 followers or whatever, it's like, I'm responding to this guy. So once you start doing, I started doing a game with it open, and it's like everything you say, you're the dumbest guy in the history of the world. And I don't care how tough you think you are mentally, once you start reading enough of that, it starts to kind of creep in. And I was like, why am I letting this get at me? And I would, the funny thing was that I found, AJ, is the minute you start interacting with somebody who was trying to just hate on you or blow you up, the minute you acknowledge them, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, hey, I like you, by the way. And hey, what do you think about what are the Packers' chances this year? So some people just want to be heard, and it becomes a game like who can insult the guy the most. I just rather let it live out there, and I can be the devil or the antichrist out there in Twitter world, and I can just go about my life, and it doesn't affect me at all.
I think everybody has a different approach. Obviously, I was reluctant to get on Twitter for the longest time, and I finally did, and it's fine. But I think you kind of have to go all or nothing. Either I have a lot of buddies that will respond to people like that, and that's their whole. If you read their stuff, their whole timeline is just them going back at guys like, oh, okay, yeah, and they just say stuff. So I think it's either like I can't imagine doing that, responding to most of the people that say stuff, because regardless, when you're anonymous, you're going to say whatever you want. They're going to try to tear people down. So it's either like all or nothing, I think, and that's why I've been tempted definitely to respond to some stupid things, but I just haven't. I don't take the time, and I think that's, for at least myself, that's the easiest way to go about it. But they
yeah, and I think you're smart to do that. I'm too curious. I'm too curious, and I end up looking even though I shouldn't. And then it's like, okay, let's crack open the corner of it. Just rip it off and let's see what everybody's saying. And then it's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a public, you, especially with how many games you do, football games and then baseball, how many games a year do you do for baseball normally?
Well, let's see. I've gone from doing 162 for the Cardinals to doing I don't know, probably 25 for Fox, because by the time August rolls around, I'm doing preseason football for the NFL for Fox. And then I get into the postseason with baseball, and I go back to baseball, and I come back to football. So it's a little bit of a juggling act, but I'm down to maybe 25 now total for Fox, which is good. And I made a comment to a New York Times writer years ago where he said, well, how can you not do every Fox baseball game and call yourself the voice of baseball on Fox? And I said, you can call me whatever you want to call me, part-time, I don't care. I said, I'm more afraid of overexposure on the air and underexposure at home. And I would rather give up some games and be around my daughters when I can on the weekends. They're older now, they're 17 and 14. Then just try to pick up every game I can do, because I can't stand watching somebody else do it. I'm happy to share, go get it, and I'll be home with my kids every once in a while, and that's just the way I'm going to do it. And if I can't do it that way, then I won't do it at all.
Yeah, I think for someone that's been in the business as long as you, I mean, you said you started doing games, what, 19?
19.
19, and you're doing a World Series at 27?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so you've paid your dues. If you want to pick and choose a little bit of what games you do, I would think people could understand that, completely.
Yeah, and I believe me, I know I keep going back to this, but I'm lucky to do what I do. There are many people that could be doing what I'm doing, and so I work really hard. I put a lot into every broadcast that I do, and people ask me about the preparation. I mean, I have to show up in Green Bay in week 13 like I've watched all 12 games that you've played prior to that. And I've got to know the storylines. And, for God's sake, with you guys, every week we show up to do a Green Bay Pack. We've done a million of your Packer games. Your defense goes through so many different permutations, and guys are out, and you're losing linebackers left and right. Not A.J. Hawk. He's there every damn game. But you guys are losing guys, and you're mixing and matching, and there's a lot to try to catch up with. And so it requires a lot of work. And, in this day and age with fantasy football and with office pools and people's knowledge of the NFL, the 24-hour-a-day cycles of sports on the NFL Network, ESPN, Fox Sports 1, fans know a lot. And it takes a lot to try and get ahead of the curve and bring something new on Sunday. So, I put a lot of work in, and I'm really well rewarded for it, and I love it. And my schedule's plenty full, believe me.
Yeah, I would think doing preseason football all the way through the postseason and doing baseball, and I know you've done World Series games at the same time as doing a football game the same day, right?
Yeah, I did. I did that maybe stupidly, but I did that a couple of years ago. 2 years ago, I did a New York Football Giants game at the 49ers, and then took a trolley car to AT&T Park and did an NLCS game with the Cardinals and the Giants, like with about 2 minutes to spare. So that was kind of a challenge. Fox wanted to do it, and I wanted to do it to prove that I could. And I'm glad I did it, but it was kind of silly, the whole trolley car thing and whatever. Here's the thing, AJ. If I get hit by a bus going into the stadium, they're still going to play the game. There probably won't even be a moment of silence. They'll play the game. Nobody cares. People are still going to tune in on TV. There's not going to be a blackout. If you don't show up, they're not going to play the game, most likely, if something tragic happens to you. For me, who's the next guy in here? So that's the way I approach my job. And I know that people at home listen to these games going, geez, will this guy shut up? Or I could do this. And that's fine. So that's kind of the way I go about it.
Well, I mean, obviously you're not giving yourself enough credit. They would definitely have at least a moment of silence, don't you think? I don't think I would get a moment of silence. Trust me, they just next man up. You know how the Packers go.
Well, it wouldn't be like the full 5-second moment of silence. It'd be like, could we just have your attention? Moment of silence. Now here's the Star Spangled Banner. There'd be just like little comma in there.
And they would just flash a quick picture of you, and no one would even know what happened.
Boo! That guy hates the Packers. Boo! Glad he's dead.
Not in Lambeau. Jeez. Oh gosh. I had something on my mind, and then when you said they were going to boo your death.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good, man.
They get a little bit too far.
No,
I'm sorry.
Hey, that's why we like it.
Golf game, by the way. Can I turn this on
Terrible. Yeah, you're the pro. I'm just a little maggot trying to learn a few things. My golf game's terrible, really bad. I mean, I haven't swung a club since
Where do you play up
Tahoe.
there? Are you in Green Bay? Where do you live in the
I'm
Aussie?
in Columbus, Ohio, right now.
That's God's country for golf courses in that area. That's about as. For some reason, there's something about, I don't know, the Ohio River, something there that they can grow grass in that area better than any other place in the world, I think.
Have you ever been to Muirfield where they play the Memorial?
Yes, sir, many times. That place is unreal.
Yeah, we live about 10 minutes away from there, and we go to the tournament almost every year, at least for a day or so, and it's a special place, man. I didn't know about it. I went like my junior year in college, and I had no idea anything happened. I was like, wait, the golf tournament. I went to the golf tournament, and I didn't watch one shot, by the way. I was like, this isn't a golf tournament. This is a huge party where everyone just rents, their houses get rented out, and people have food.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous. I was honestly, it completely opened my eyes up to what golf is.
But I'm sure you've played it.
Yeah,
and
a few times.
You will agree with me that for the most nondescript, littlest creek in the history of the world, that thing comes into play on more shots than you would ever think it would. It's incredible the way that golf course is designed around that creek.
100%. It makes you wonder if Jack Nicklaus is an alien, how he somehow designs this little creek that I could hit 15 balls in 18 holes. Some holes I hit it 3 times.
Yeah, I know.
And and I can jump across it too. That's another thing.
It's unbelievable. But yeah, I mentioned my dad. My dad went to Ohio State. My dad took a class from Woody Hayes and was really good friends with Woody Hayes up until the day he died. So I kind of grew up on Ohio State football a little bit, and I think in his honor, whenever they're playing, especially Michigan, I'm Ohio State through.
All right, believe me, anyone watching this from Ohio loves to hear that. We appreciate it. And
I went to Indiana.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
We got nothing to pump our chest out about football wise. So I'll go to you.
What about John Mellencamp? You can pump your chest up about him.
Yeah, I can. And when I was around Bloomington for those 3.5 years, notice it didn't take 4 because I didn't graduate.
You never graduated college?
I did not. I left. I saw Mellencamp around town quite a bit in Bloomington. But yeah, I left. I was broadcasting minor league baseball at the age of 19, then 20, and then I got offered the Cardinals job my junior year, and I was faced with the decision of finishing college, hoping that someday I'd get the Cardinal job, or just taking the Cardinal job. And I took the Cardinal job, left college, thought I was going to get my degree with correspondence classes, which is ridiculous. And maybe you've done that. Did you graduate?
I did graduate. Yeah, I stayed the whole time. I stayed all 4 years.
Good for you. I couldn't do it. I tried to do it through correspondence where you teach yourself. It's on you. You go to a classroom and take the test. I'm just not that disciplined. So I sit here before you a college dropout.
Well, trust me. Look around. A lot of guys in big time, high profile jobs and that are the best at what they do didn't finish college. But if you have a job offer, did you talk to your teacher? I mean, did you have to go to your dad? Like, so when that happened, was it even a question of whether you were going to take it or not?
No. I mean, I think I knew AJ from a young age. I wanted to pitch. I wasn't really pitch and be a Major League Baseball player until reality set in. I broke my neck playing football my senior year of high school. I dislocated both shoulders, one pitching, the other playing football. I had 2 back surgeries in college. So I'm a physical wreck by the time I was 23. And I just had always known anyway, just because of the time I spent with my dad and the introduction I had to the business, that's what I was going to do. So, he threw me on the air when I was 16. He threw me on the air when I was 18. I did play-by-play for a Cardinal game that I wasn't even really watching when I was 18. So it was just what I was going to do. And when the job opened up for a third guy, I'd done 2 years of the minor leagues, and they wanted Jack Buck's kid to do it. So it was a good education that I got early, because there was an article written here in St. Louis in the Post-Dispatch about how it was insulting that I got the job because so many broadcasters are struggling, and yet just because I'm Jack Buck's son, I got the job. And I was just blown away. I mean, I was 21, not even 21 at the time, and I cried like a baby that my hometown newspaper was writing this article that I was just stepping on everybody's toes, which I was. And I had to grow up quick. And so it was a great way to get into it. And I got to call my dad my broadcast partner for 8 years, which was great.
I was going to ask you, 8 years you got to work with him?
Yeah. And, for as much time as we missed, and he was gone all the time doing games, baseball, football, whatever. For as much time as we missed, we got a lot of that back, because then you're on the team bus with him, then you're on the charter with him, then you're in the hotel, you're having lunch, you're going out after a game with your dad. And it was, he never was in my face about it. He just kind of let me find my own way. And I think that's the only way it works. If he was there grinding on me, here's how you got to do it, kid. Here's how, here's what I would have said. It wouldn't have worked. He just left me alone and let me find my own way. And it made us that much stronger as a father-son combination. So it was a great way to learn, and I was at least smart enough at the time to know that I shouldn't take it for granted, which I didn't.
Did you go to him for not only advice? I'm sure you asked him questions and how you could get better, but was he like a tough critic on you? Would you guys rewatch games and he would tell you what you did wrong?
A couple things he told me. One, he drove me to my first year in the minor leagues. He actually drove me to Louisville. And he said, you've grown up watching Major League Baseball your whole life. Unless you think you could make the play 10 times out of 10, you can't be critical of these guys, because some of these guys are young and they're minor league baseball players. And 2, he always told me to work on my diction, work on my vocabulary. But as far as actually listening back, he never said, well, here's how I would have called that. I think he kind of just wanted me, because he didn't have it, to figure out what worked for me and what didn't on my own. And so he was not a critic. He was a guy that was infinitely proud, but never really was upfront about it. He was never the guy that would say, hey, let me tell you how proud I am of you. I just knew it. And so when I finished my first World Series at the age of 27, which we've talked about a couple of times. I remember at the end, I was looking into the camera, and I was picturing him in the lens of the camera. And I was really talking directly to him. And so at the end of it, I get off the air and I pick up the phone and I called him and I said, well, what'd you think of that? I just called the Yankees world champions. It was end of game 6 at Yankee Stadium. They hadn't won in a long time. And I was proud of it, and I was thinking of him, and I called him, and I said, well, what'd you think of that? And he said, what time's the game come on? Like he hadn't watched any of it. Yeah. And then he said, it was great, Buck. It was great. And he handed the phone to my mom, and my mom told me later the reason why he did it is because he was crying so much he couldn't tell me and couldn't talk. And that's just kind of, I knew down deep how proud he was of me. And, I hope my kids know how proud I am of them that same way, because it gave me such strength as a kid in this business.
I was hoping, I was listening to that. I was hoping that's where you were going with that when you said you got to hand your phone to your mom. Man, that gives you goosebumps thinking about that, how your dad, it sounds like one of those awesome old school guys, that just tough guy that was the best at what he did, and he was so proud of his kid, and he handed the phone to your mom. That's just that makes you really feel good. I think of myself being a parent, and I'm sure that kind of stuff, especially when you're 27, you just called your first game. And I guess your mom told you later, but man, how powerful is that? I would think that would still kind of energize you.
I think about it at the end of really every big event. I mean, my whole life as a kid or as a young guy in this business, I got off the air and I'd go right to the phone. And I was, I wanted to hear what my parents thought. I still crave my mom's approval for what I'm doing. I'm 44 years old. My mom's 75, and I'm still looking for her to tell me it was good. And, that's what I got from my dad. So, I was lucky that way. I had such a good relationship with him that we talked more as friends, and we were never kind of the typical father-son. He was a World War II vet. He was a guy that was shot during World War II, a Purple Heart recipient. He came from nothing. He was a Depression-era kid. He only went to Ohio State because he was in World War II, and the GI Bill paid for him to go to college to his state university. He was a Cleveland guy growing up. So, he was a self-made man. And I think I was so privileged to be his kid. We didn't grow up white collar. We didn't grow up in the upper class. We were a good, solid middle-class family. He was still scrapping to get by. But he wanted me to find my own way. And I'm so glad he did it that way, because I think had he been on my back the whole time, he would have pushed me away from it. And I never experienced any of that.
Or I feel like a guy like him is so good at what he does, and everyone probably, I'm sure wherever he went, people were very complimentary to him. If he was on your back grinding you hard, that'd give me a nervous breakdown. If that's your dad and he's critiquing every word you say in the job, and you're trying to follow in his footsteps, that couldn't have ended well, I think.
It would have been hard. And, now, thankfully, we have Twitter for that. So exactly. I consider Twitter now my, on my back dad instead of my actual dad.
If your dad was still around, I would love to see some Twitter people come to your dad face. I could see, a guy like your dad knocking on, the door of someone, like a Twitter critic. If you're like, what is this all about? And then he just, okay, come on, little buck, let's go meet these guys.
Exactly. Well, it's funny you say that, and I will name drop here, but only because I've known him from college, and I didn't know him as a famous guy. But Paul Rudd, the actor, who's been in a million movies, great guy, he's never changed since we were 18, same person. He and I were talking about doing a documentary where we just went in a van and tried to find the 3 most harsh critics that we have out there in the Twitter world, and just spend the day with them and see at the end of the day, after asking them, hey, what was going on in your life when you wrote that, Joe Buck, you're the worst broadcaster, and, my dead grandma can do a game better than you. What was going on that day? And let's spend the day and see if at the end of the day you still feel the same way. Maybe they would, but I mean, I'd like to think that, I think people look at you as a player and they think of you as a thing. They don't think of you as a person sometimes. And I think even in my weird world, they look at us as kind of like the communal punching bag a little bit these days. And they don't really think about, whatever they write. They've written stuff about my kids, and it's like, hey, I'm a dad. I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm whatever. It's, you're still a person. And I think when you can kind of separate all that stuff and realize that they're just kind of taking swings at somebody they don't know, then I think it becomes a lot easier to take.
I like that you said it. Yeah, they're taking swings at someone they don't know because it's true. They don't know you. They just see you're someone on their TV that they see and hear and your voice is so recognizable too. It's probably easy. It's just like anything. It doesn't whatever. Some people are jealous of where you're at and what you're doing, and I see it all the time now. I don't watch a whole lot of other sport. For some reason, I've become a big hockey fan recently. I got a couple buddies that play for the Columbus team here, and they always are showing clips of highlights of like World Series or whatever. And I'm sure it happens to you walking through restaurants and your voice pops up calling like World Series and playoff baseball. So I think your voice is so, when people think of baseball, obviously your voice, your dad's voice, they think of that. And football is, I mean, you're number one football crew too. And so you just got done doing your fourth Super Bowl?
Fourth Super Bowl, yeah.
How many World Series now?
16.
Yeah, how have you done 16 Super Bowls? Does Fox just get every one?
16 World Series?
Yeah. World Series, my bad, yeah.
Yeah, we've had it since 1996.
So is that how they signed a multi-year deal to get World Series?
That's the thing. Once you start feeling like you're the greatest thing that's ever been born, you realize if Fox doesn't have the rights, I'm not doing it. So it's not like I want a national talent search to do this thing. I just happen to be at the right network that gets the rights to do all this stuff. So, now they just got golf, and my name's in the hat to call golf for Fox starting not this summer coming up, but the next summer. And if I'm lucky enough to get that, then it'd be another thing that I would try to tackle. But, it's a fun time to be at Fox. And I've been there since I was 26. And now here I sit as a 44-year-old guy. Actually, I was there since when I was 24. So it's been 20 years, my 21st year at Fox. And, they just keep adding to what they cover. And I've just been lucky to be at the right place at the right network at the right time.
Yeah, at the same time, though, there is millions of guys training to try to take your job. So
they're coming.
You can say whatever you want. Like, yeah, you were great because Fox has – because you're a good guy and you're saying my network's lucky to have it, but you've done 16 World Series. If they didn't feel like if they felt like for one of those games in one of those series you weren't doing a good job, trust me, they would just boot you right out of there. You know that. I'm sure that's how the broadcasting world is probably one of the most competitive there is.
Yeah, and it is. And, I think it's becoming more so because more and more kids that I talk to want to get into it more than I've ever come across. You're wisely, planning for the next phase of your life by doing stuff like this, because I think you want to be around sports. You don't want to just completely walk away from it whenever that day comes. And so I run into kids that want to get into broadcasting, ask me questions about it, want to have coffee, want to sit down, and I'll talk to anybody about it. I'm open. The first thing I say is get a famous father. That's my first bit of advice. And then after that, the only way to do this job is to actually do it. You can't really read about how to do play-by-play. You can't read about how to play, inside linebacker in the NFL. You have to just go do it. And so that's what I say. Go sit in the upper deck at a baseball game, at a college baseball game or a minor league baseball game or a high school baseball game, and do it into a tape recorder and go home and listen to it and hear how you sound. And that's really the only way that you can improve in this. And that's kind of advice point number one whenever I talk to a kid about it.
It's to actually get up and do it. It's very easy to talk about it and not do it. I know that much for anything. Even this little thing I'm doing, talking to some people. It was great. I just got all excited, had the idea what I was going to do. Like, yeah, it'd just be cool if I could figure it out in Skype and talk to some guys. And then as it kind of got closer, it looked like I was going to get to talk to a few people. And guys like you were lucky. I was lucky enough that were like, yeah, of course. Then I was like, oh, okay, now it's kind of real. Now I got to do this actually. Like, and sometimes when I'm talking to you, or I talk to some other guys, I forget that it's me, and I just assume that I forget that I'm running it. That's what's funny. I forget that hey, if I just sit here, you would easily take it over and run this thing. But I've talked to some other people where I'll get lost in listening to their answers. Like, man, yeah, that's cool, all right. And then I'll just sit there and forget. I'll have to snap out of it. Like, wait, hold on, hey, this is me.
Right, my turn. Yeah,
yeah.
I get that, but I there aren't a lot of guys that have that ability to look ahead, and so I've been around plenty of guys that the funny thing is, AJ. I think what you'll find is people like you genuinely. You're a good guy. People are going to want to be a part of what you do. The guys that kill me are the guys that, and I've run into more of them in baseball, especially guys when I was doing day-to-day and 162 games. Guys that when you were a broadcaster and you walked up with a tape recorder wanting to do a pregame interview, they'd be like, not now. I'm busy. Get somebody else. They never gave you the time of day. Then the minute their career's over, they come knocking on, hey, how can I get into broadcasting? Will you help me? Will you put a call in? It's like, when you were playing, you had no time for any of this stuff. And now you want to be a part of it. So good for you. I mean, to be able to plan and do this says a lot about you, and you're a natural. You'll be great at this stuff. So I'm proud that you're doing it.
Man, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you coming on. But yeah, I'm like a weird fan of like podcasts. I don't know if you ever listen to any kind of podcast, but I listen to a lot of comics. They host podcasts. Seem like every single one of them. And then, do you know the actor Kevin Pollak?
Oh God, yeah.
Kevin's awesome. He has the Kevin Pollak chat show, and I talk about it actually a lot. And that dude just sits down and has like 2.5-hour interviews, like just not even, they don't seem like interviews because he's so good and natural. With big time guys, you have Tom Hanks, Jon Favreau, and that's how weird I am. I'll be on an airplane and I just watch that. I download it on iTunes and watch a 2.5-hour interview with Kevin Pollak and Jon Favreau, or Kevin Pollak and some guy that was on Saturday Night Live in 1985. So I get into weird stuff sometimes.
That kind of stuff though is fascinating, and I think it makes you think, and if you're going to interview people, what you'll notice, and my dad was a great interviewer, is the ability to listen and to be, it's not that much different than doing play-by-play. It's the ability to listen. It's the ability to react. And so the one piece of advice my dad gave me when I was starting to do interviews was, you got to make sure you listen to the answer, because if you have 8 questions you want to get to and you get through number 2 and now you just have to jump right into number 3 in your mind, you could have missed a whole gold mine of information or something that this guy really wanted to talk about, but because you can't wait to get to your 3rd question that you dreamed up 3 weeks ago, you missed all that. So if a guy says, yeah, I'm having a good day, I just finished killing 6 people and now I'm putting my kid to bed, okay, good. So tell us about your off season, and you just missed the whole story. So it's a unique talent to be able to listen, think, and it's what freaks people out with what I do, because when I've got a headset on, I'm watching the game, I'm talking, but I'm also listening to somebody count me backward at the end of a break. So, I've got a guy going 8, 7, 6, and I can hear that when I'm saying, so the Packers punt, Mastay's punt goes 45 yards, ball's out at the 13-yard line, and now the Vikings come on the field, and here comes Christian Ponder, whatever it is, and I've got to finish that when the guy in my ear hits 1. And it's that same kind of talent to be able to have that inner dialogue going, okay, where do I want to go with this next? But something can catch you off guard in the answer that they're giving you, and now you want to go explore that. And so those are the great ones doing this. I'm not, but there are a lot of guys, and I know Pollak is one of those guys because he's a comedian. His mind's going 100 miles an hour, but he has the ability to focus on where he wants to go and shift if the situation calls for it.
It's true, and Kevin Pollak, he acknowledges it a lot too when it's really hard not to bring yourself into it and say I and talk about yourself, and that's what I've done. I do a lot in this. I'll just ramble for 25 seconds and be like, and how do you feel? Like, he's just talking about something. Man, oh, that's a great bookcase and trophies you got there, and then about nothing that has anything to do with the question I'm going to ask. So yeah, it's tough, man. That's why it's fun. I was like, hey, if I'm going to do something, you just got to get out and do it. Who cares? You're going to suck for a while.
Right. But just remember where you're coming from. You've always been on the other end of this, and you've always had people lined up to talk to you, and you're the focus of an interview and whatever, and now you're the guy doing it. You see it a lot of times when guys try to do it at the Super Bowl. Hey, we're going to be cute, and we're going to give the microphone to whoever, and some of that stuff can be funny. Some of the stuff can be just brutal and dumb and not funny because they don't really know how to go about it. So the only way to do it, as we said about play-by-play or interviewing, is what you're doing, which you're fun to talk to. That's the first thing, is you're a fun guy to talk to, and not everybody is. And believe me, I've been on interviews with people that I wasn't that excited to talk to just because they were boring. And you're never going to be boring. So that's a good watch or a good listen as somebody that's just tuning in.
How do you do that when you have to interview someone, honestly, that you either, not that you don't like, but that you don't care either way. You're indifferent about it. There's hey, go interview this guy, or have a sit down long type interview with a one-on-one with this person, and in your mind you're like, man, I just don't really care. How do you get up for that? Because I've already started thinking about that, where I want to talk to as many interesting, cool people. That's honestly who I'm. Like, I had Brett Michaels on a couple weeks ago. I'm talking to people that I think would be funny and just interesting to me. And so, but I already started thinking, like, man, eventually I'm going to be talking to some people that I'm really not that into. And how do you handle that?
Well, my advice to that would be to go in with your eyes open and be prepared to be surprised. I mean, whether it's people who have a perception of the kind of guy I am because they hear me say second down and 4, and they don't really know me as a guy, or people who look at you and they say, oh, this is some big, thick linebacker who can't, carry on an interview. Well, obviously that's not the case. And then I'd like to think, obviously, I'm not the boring guy that people think I am. So I say give everybody the benefit of the doubt until you're into it, and then they're not giving you anything. I mean, on some level, if somebody wants to give you information and wants to sit there and talk, you're going to make it work, and it's going to be beneficial, and you'll have something that you come out of it with. If somebody's going to sit there and they're not going to give you anything, I don't care what you do. You can light yourself on fire, and they're not going to give you any kind of a reaction, then you're really at their mercy. I mean, my ultimate one is the HBO show I did, and Artie Lang came on and just lit me up. And I told him to beforehand. I mean, I found out he and I have become friends since that. But, I mean, that was kind of the undoing of my show on some level. He came out, and if you haven't seen it, Google it and watch the most uneasy 10 minutes of my life. But, I mean, he had snorted Vicodin before he came out there and had been drinking Jack Daniels. And so he came out there, and I had told him before, I said, hey, let's make this fun. Rip me, give me crap, I don't care, I can take it. And he took it and went 9 miles past the proper line. But you know what? Hey, you live and you learn and you react and whatever. So I guess it's a long story of saying you don't know what you're going to get.
Don't judge people, basically. It sounds almost like I feel like an idiot even asking that question, because you basically said it's so true. You said, don't be judging. Don't go in with some preconceived notions about this guy. Don't judge him. Just like how to be a decent human is basically what you said.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I could give you 50 examples of players that we talk to when we sit down in production meetings when we're doing an NFL game, and I come out of there going, I did not see that coming. There are so many guys that surprise you in a good way. I mean, of all the guys we talked to last year, I thought Eddie Lacy was one of the most engaging, genuine, likable players, young players we talked to in years. And I say that he was honest. He was, I think, he appeared kind of vulnerable with how he felt. He didn't know how he was going to. We talked at the beginning of the year. He'd never seen snow, and now here's a guy that's playing as a Green Bay Packer, and was one of the most wonderful guys and enjoyable guys we talked to all year. I didn't know what to expect. I thought when he walked in, I thought he was just going to kind of be like, yeah, whatever, I don't want to do this. And he was the total opposite. So you just don't know, and you have to give them if they're going to bother to sit down with you, then I guess you got to give them that chance.
Yeah, Eddie is. You hit it right there. Eddie, I say all the time, he's like a breath of fresh air. He came in, young guy, absolute monster, rookie of the year, but one of the happiest, most just free-spirited, awesome guys I've been around, and plays so hard, so big, so physical. I say he's a true throwback. That dude plays through so much pain, doesn't care, just laughs it off, and he could care less what's happening outside of his world. He just wants to have a great time and be with his teammates and be a great teammate. So I can definitely see how he came across that way in the in your guys' production meeting. But just real quick to go back to Artie before I get you out of here. I know we're a little late. What was really cool, I honestly hadn't seen your whole Artie show thing, and then like I said, I'm a real huge fan of stand-up comedy. I'm like a stand-up nerd, and I read Artie's first book called Too Fat to Fish, and then Artie wrote a second book, and I'm reading it, and old Joe Buck writes the foreword, and I was like, wow, this is awesome, man. Cool. How'd this happen? And then so that got me to going to look at your show and see when Artie just freaked out. It was like Artie wasn't even a human. He was so blasted on whatever he was doing and how far he took it. So, I mean, how did you come about after that? How did you come out writing the foreword to his book?
Well, he called me, or I called him. Actually, I called him because right after that was the last segment of the show. That, by the way, was the first show, the first of 3. That show started with me doing the first sit down with Brett Favre when he hadn't talked to anybody, and it ended up going to the Vikings, I think, that year. So it was I thought it was a great interview. It was at least newsworthy. And then it boils down to this Artie Lang moment. So after this thing ends, I can't get off the stage without doing this impromptu press conference with writers that had been there. Oh, and HBO completely overreacted. I mean, what really upset me about it was that the executive producer of the show went berserk about Artie's appearance. And I was thinking internally, we hired Artie Lang to come on this show. He's on with Howard Stern, which I listen to religiously. You kind of know what you're going to get when he gets there. It's on at night on HBO, in and around, like the Cat House documentaries or whatever the hell those are, like G-String Divas or whatever. I mean, let's not act like we're doing this on the religious hour. This was at night on HBO. So we went over the line, big deal. And I got lumped in with that. So I called him the next day or 2 days later, and I said, look, I just want you to know, I'm glad you came on. I was a fan of yours before. I'm still a fan of yours. And I just appreciate you spending time there. And he said, look, man, hey, I'm a comic, okay? I got to laugh. I went a little bit over the line. And like all good comics, he goes, anything I can do, anything. I don't want to ever stand in the way of a guy earning a living. Anything I can do, you let me know. So I kept in contact with him, and I actually had him open the second show with me. And so I bring him back. He does the cold open, and I threatened to quit HBO, which will be in my book someday, over having him back. I said, I'm not doing the show if we don't have Artie Lang back. If we don't have him back, I'm not walking out there and acting like that didn't happen. And so I had to basically threaten to quit to make that happen. And we kept in contact. The guy could not be a sweeter, nicer guy. He's got a lot of problems, obviously, that he's trying to battle. But I told him, whatever I can do to help you, I will. And I've gone on his DirecTV show 3 or 4 times. And he's a talented, smart, funny, obviously, but real big sports fan that's really intelligent. And that's how he asked me to do it, and I was happy to write it, and I think it turned out pretty good.
It was great, and it takes huge balls from you to, like you said, to stand up to HBO and threaten to quit and tell them. And how could they? So that you're telling me they wanted you to come out there and act like, oh hey, here we go, all happy go lucky.
I was told by the head of HBO, and I've never even really talked about this before, so here you go. You're getting groundbreaking information that nobody cares about. I was told by the head of HBO, you are in no uncertain terms allowed to even reference it or talk about it.
Oh my God.
And I said, okay, here's where I was stunned. I said, wait, what? I said, this is my show. It's got my name on it. I said, you don't know me. You don't know me. You don't have any idea what I'm like. But if there's one thing I can do is I can laugh at myself. And I'm still walking into stadiums 3 months later because they were spread out one every 3 months. I said, people are still yelling Artie Lange's name at me. So I have to live with that, which is fine. But I'm not going to walk out on that stage in front of that audience in New York and act like it didn't happen. That's not me. So I'm going to talk about it, and he's going to be in the open, or I'm not doing the show. I said, I've got a job. I work at Fox. I don't need this. So one or the other, you make the call, but he's going to be on with me, or I'm not going to do it. And they finally relented and let me do it. And the cold open in the room got the biggest laugh. It was so rewarding. And they all came up to me after that second show and said, that was the right thing to do. You were right. Good job. And so, one more show after that, it was canceled. So it couldn't have been that great.
Well, I think it's a blessing in disguise that it was canceled. If a guy is that dumb to tell you to just act like it didn't happen and not talk, but you should, that's a typical corpo suit in the background telling you to go and not acknowledge it when it's your show. It's called Joe Buck Live, right?
Yeah.
And he wants you to try to make you look like an idiot. That's just, see, it's good that you stood up for it, because I think a lot of guys wouldn't have, especially because you think, oh, this is my shot. I got this job. I got my own show now. But you're so accomplished and so good at everything else that you had that foundation. You didn't need it. It was just probably a side job almost.
I'd never experienced working for somebody. And in this case, I would say I had never worked for somebody that was scared. And it wasn't just the top guy. It was guys below him that were between me and the top guy. And it's like, guys, if we can't laugh at this, if you can't go out and spin this and say, hey, we had the Artie Lange moment last time, tune in this time, and who knows what's going to happen. If you can't take advantage of that little nugget that we got in a live show that's lost in the millions of other live shows, and that's the other thing. It was live, obviously, or that wouldn't have gotten off. Yeah. And there aren't any live shows out there. So I walked out there on that stage, and it was dead live. Those two words don't go together. But, if I said it that second on a stage, it was on your TV. And nobody does a show like that. And to do that the first time out, I was proud of the show. And it did a great rating. And I remember going to the HBO guys and said, well, it did a really good rating. And the rating went up as the hour went on. People weren't tuning out. So, we don't talk about ratings at HBO. I said,
what?
Well, why? It's a good story. We don't talk about ratings at HBO. I was like, well, I'm going to talk about ratings at HBO then, because I'm proud of it. And I'm not going to act like this was some big failure. It was a good show that, if you judged a lot of these shows, whether it's Letterman or Conan or even Jimmy Fallon when he started with his late night show, late night, after 3, you have no idea what the show is going to be. So we just never got a chance to settle in, and that's what upsets me, that it's considered like a failure, which I guess it was in some degree, but we never got a chance to really settle into a groove and figure out what the hell we were doing. By the time we'd done 3 shows, it was over, and it's like it never happened.
It just that blows my mind. I understand that there's always people behind the scenes that seem to not have the creativity or the intelligence to figure it out. I don't want to say intelligence, but or just the balls to stand up for it and stand by their guy, and stand by you and say, yeah, let's do it. This is my man. They should have rode the ratings. If that's your first show, you could not ask for more gold to promo and say, look what happened this first show. Are you kidding me?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I didn't know anything. I didn't know any of that. I knew it was after you had 3 episodes and all that. But it's good to know like the background of that now, because that's something that you would think any executive would absolutely dream of. Like, look at this. This is amazing. This guy's all coked up, snorting pills, going crazy on our show. Hey, what's coming up next week? You could do anything.
Unbelievable. And, the week prior to that second show, Artie was on Letterman, and Letterman did the whole second segment with Artie about the HBO show. And he said, hey, you were on that Joe Buck HBO show. What the hell happened to you, Artie? What was that? So they're talking about it. It's like, and look, this is one-sided, and I can come off like bitter, the man scorned or whatever. But, I'm just telling you, working at Fox with David Hill, who I'm sure you never met, he's an Australian guy that did a lot of innovation. That was always a guy like, yeah, let's go for it. And I'm kind of Fox's guy. I wasn't really HBO's guy at that point, so I hadn't earned anything in HBO or any real leeway there with this show. So I get it, and there was budgetary too. So whatever. I'd like to get another crack at something like that, and see how it would go. I think it'd be a lot better, or at least received a lot better, or perceived a lot better.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you that. So you would like to try it again?
Yeah, I mean, not exactly that. I did a pilot for Fox for a late night show that was more comedy driven, more more fun. I think the issue was at HBO, and this is probably on me, but I think they wanted it more straightforward and kind of more highbrow, like the Gumbel show, Real Sports. For me, I don't really have an interest in looking at sports and making it life or death. I think if you're talking to Brett Favre, you can have fun with him. I think we had a segment with Michael Irvin and Chad Johnson, then Chad Ochocinco, that kind of stuff. So I mean, it wasn't all brilliant stuff, but if there's no room in this world for a half hour of like fun stuff with sports people, then I'm in the wrong world, because it's really just not that serious.
Yeah, hey, you got me. I'll push it whenever you want to. Whenever you try to get back in that world, I'll be your biggest supporter.
I had Urlacher on.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy, and now he's at Fox. He's on with Randy Moss. I got
all your guys.
All my past is there on one show.
Just think of the dynamic you could have. So you're Joe Buck. You're probably going to call 30 more Super Bowls and 45 more World Series.
Sure.
And so you say people think you're like this, like whatever. Don't get too excited. Don't get too high or low. And then think about if you had this like comedy variety show, kind of like a Chelsea Handler type feel, but you as running it and you driving it and bringing in like cool, not only cool athletes, but people from all over. I'm telling you what, man, what a dynamic you could have. You could have an empire. You already do, but you could have a bigger empire.
It sounds like you've been listening to meetings I've had with my agents. Let's go. Let's make this happen. Come on.
Well, tell your agent to get on it and tell him do not pitch that thing to HBO, because you're not going.
Don't worry. Believe me, they don't want me and I don't want them, so we're good.
Good for you. I tell you what, with the internet and Netflix and Amazon, everything's coming out with all these crazy good shows on these streaming things. I see big things in the future for the Joe Buck Variety Hour.
I like
half
that.
hour.
I like that. I'll do 10 minutes. I don't care.
Joe Buck 10 minute
podcast fun fest.
Whatever you want. That's awesome. Well, I kept you way too long. I'm going to let you get back to your family. But, man, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I'm super honored to have you on. It's just been a lot of fun. Hope to have you back someday. And
I'd love to.
Yeah,
you did great. And I think the only way to end this is for me to go. Dun, 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 dun. Go, Pack, go.
You remember hearing "Roll Out the Barrel" up there? Have you heard that song?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I read the words as they bounce along on the big screen there at Lambeau Field.
Yeah, my probably the biggest thrill of my life was when I'm standing on the sidelines and Will Ferrell led "Roll Out the Barrel."
Oh my God.
He
gets no better than that.
He was just standing there, had a huge mustache, legit real mustache, and was just straight Will Ferrell. And I was like, right in the middle of the game, I'm standing like in the huddle, and the coaches are talking to us, and I'm like bumping my buddies. I'm like, bro, I was like, look at this. This is awesome. And we just, the whole team just stared at Will Ferrell. I'm like, is it weird if I go like shake his hand right before they snap the ball? Like I need to see this guy.
That's great.
So, yeah, well, I appreciate you being the diehard Packers supporter you are.
Here it is.
For the HawkCast, you're the diehard Packers supporter, so that's awesome. Your sweatshirt looks great. We appreciate it. Once again, thank you. You were awesome. I will be bugging you with questions through email and other times for the next rest of my life. I'm just letting you know because you're the best, man.
So anything you want to bounce off me, AJ, I'm here for you.
I appreciate it, man. I love. I get really, I can be annoying with people that I think are really good at what they do, and you're the best at what you do. So I'll annoy the hell out of you. I'm just letting you know.
That's all right. Well, I'll see you at Tahoe. Are you gonna play Tahoe?
Yes, sir. Are you in?
I think so. Yeah.
I committed. I somehow got another invite. I'm coming. As soon as they send me an invite, I email them back instantly and say, don't even think about it.
Here's what I ask of you then.
Uh-oh.
Spend some time with me off the course because I walk around that casino and it's filled with a lot of San Francisco Giants baseball fans. Mm-hmm. And they walk around and they blow me up for a lot of the Green Bay Packers stuff, same stuff. And this last story, this San Francisco Giant fan comes up to me. He's with two other buddies. And he's like, hey, man, I just want to tell you, you really suck. And I said,
to your face?
To my face. I go, all right, good. I said, have a good day. He goes, no, I'm serious. You really suck. And I said, well, just so you know, I get that, I know you think I don't like the Giants. I said, I get that from Yankees fans. I get that from Red Sox fans. I get that from Packers fans. I get that from New York Football Giants fans. He goes, well, then maybe you ought to just sit down and think about the fact that you get that because you suck. And I said, you know what? Of all the people that have ever given me crap, you're the most calm. And he's like, yeah. And so I ended up buying him a beer and shook his hand, and that was the end of that.
That's crazy, man. You know when that happens, when he can. Did you think he was joking?
I did at first, and then his friends are like, "Come on, Kevin, come on, man, just back off." I'm like, God. I don't care about Kevin. It's fine. It's okay.
Well, let's do that this year. I'll walk around with you, and if say Kevin comes up to you again, I'll just lock him up, rear naked choke, and we'll put him out. We'll just drop him right in the casino floor.
I like that. I'll see you there.
Yes, that'll be fun. I look forward to it and look forward to watching what you do in the future, all your future Super Bowls. Hopefully I'm playing in some of them. And
absolutely. You're 1 for 1 with me, so there you go.
Didn't even talk about it. Joe Buck called the Super Bowl that I was lucky enough to play and win in. So, man, what full circle, man. What a weird world we live in. What a weird world. I would have never guessed it. But, Joe Buck, thank you. You're great. I really appreciate it.
All right, AJ. Be well.
Thank you for joining in. Please visit thehawkcast.com where you can discover the next guest, get a little more information about why this exists, watch past episodes, or link over to iTunes. And tell some friends too, so we can all hear more great stories together.